I suddenly feel too tired to pronounce her surname. So if Debbie, if you're watching this, it's Guadalupe. I think I might have totally murdered that. So Debbie, I do apologize. Then I will take the lessons and learn it properly. But what was fantastic, Alex Newman couldn't make it, of New American John Birch Society, friend of mine, of course, friend of Debbie's. And he then sent a replacement. Now, very often when it's Alex Newman, we think this is so difficult. Anyone who's brilliant is so difficult to replace. But he certainly did it. A 24-year-old young man came on called Andrew Muller. And Andrew Muller gives us hope in regard to when we mentor young people, when we encourage young people, and we allow them and we show them the facts and we allow them to make up their own mind about things, then suddenly you produce these incredible young people that are extremely conservative. So I just want to encourage you with that, JJ, and also the audience, because they are out there. We just have a responsibility to mentor them and encourage them. That's what Alex is doing. Andrew does work for the New American and Liberty Sentinel, and is in charge. Then helps to run Alex Media, which is fantastic. And Debbie, Andrew, and Alex made the trip on behalf of all of us. There were others, maybe 6 or 7. A few people in the first week and then in the second week, in regard to going down to Brazil and attending the lunacy at COP30 and finding out what the climate mad nutbags want to continue to bring in and shut down oil and then assign us to solar panels and wind farms, which is what's happening over here. So it was a very interesting discussion. But the key thing is everybody is encouraging young people in their development and showing them the facts. And in Andrew's case, showing him why the Constitution of the United States is important, what it was founded on, what it believes in. Now, whether the founding fathers were, some of them, Masons, Deists, and all the rest, we could get into that interesting discussion. But the fact is, the Constitution, it exists. We just have too many people that are trying to ignore it from a political point of view. So why I'm going to have a chat with JJ, and then, God willing, I've got Lewis Herms coming on, who's running for Lieutenant Governor in California, and also now our mutual friend, Doc P. Chambers, who's running for Lieutenant Governor in Texas. But there is a reason, again, why we're all coming together. Because, as we mentioned on the last show, child trafficking is real. People are having their children taken, whether that is literally through kidnapping, through satanic ritual abuse, because it exists, it is real, or whether that is the fact that through the court system, there's a legalization of taking children away from parents. JJ's got a very powerful story to say that in regard to how a friend of his was affected by that. But we have a mutual friend, and with Tammy and Peter, and their son, who was 18 on the 12th of December, was taken when he was a toddler, 3-4 years. So we have a website called whereisjonahreef.com, RIEF.com. Anyone to go through anything like this, I think, is very difficult for those that have never been through it or have never been close to it to ever imagine. Especially, also, we begin to understand it when there are dear friends of ours that have been through this. And satanic ritual abuse is real. Bloodlines, why people do this, is real. But it's not conspiracy anymore. So as I say, whereisjonahreef.com, please go to that website, sign up, and follow what's going on. JJ, you when I interviewed you on my podcast on the Sutherland Report, which I had the privilege to do, You talked about a case that a friend of yours went through, which I found really quite shocking in regard to how the authorities then came against your friend and how they abused their power. And I just wondered if you don't mind, if we could recount the story, because this is very, very precedent. And you also have an incredible catchphrase, which I think we should start with, right? The fact that you stand more chance. I leave the words to you, JJ.
Well, you stand a better chance of finding Bigfoot than you do a honest judge right there in Payne County, where we're trying to get a grand jury. So absolutely, that is a very true statement. So my friend that you're talking about, Mark, it's unbelievable. People could not believe this guy just is amazing at the evidence that he's been able to collect. That's what's so shocking about this story is shocking what's going on, but it's more shocking that you don't have to wonder, you don't have to believe whether he's telling the truth. When he walked in my office, I was just like, oh, I can't believe all this. I can't. And what was funny, he comes in, he tells me how the judge and the DA and all of these people are conspiring against him to take his kids and to go after him. And I said, well, I don't know about that. And he goes, hey, the DHS, you can't make this stuff up. DHS was sending his file to one of their investigators or one of their employees, and they accidentally sent it to him. So here he has all this evidence that they're having communications ex parte with the judge, that they all know that the ex-spouse is one abusing the child, but they don't like this guy. And so he has documents showing the police involved in some of this. He has documents showing the judge is involved in all this. And so I just told him, I said, hey, I've got to call my lawyer, just check this out. And he goes, well, who's your lawyer? I said, oh, you won't know him. I said, he's retired. And I said, I'm good friends with him, and I get legal advice from him all the time. I said, I'm going to call him. And he said, well, who are you calling? I go, it's no boy named Stan Ward. And he goes, that's my lawyer. I said, he said, he just retired because he had some illness. And I said, yep, he just retired due to the illness. I get the lawyer on the phone, and the lawyer tells me, JJ, this guy can collect records better than you. And if this guy tells you anything, he's telling the truth. You help him. And so I've started helping him for the last probably 3 to 4 years. And it's just been unbelievable where it's led us. Hey, this guy, it is my understanding. It's not just my understanding. I've seen documents to show that the ex admitted to abuse on this kid. Extreme abuse, that the DHS worker admitted to abuse. They return the kid back to the abuser, and they go after this guy. And again, it's just been an ongoing trial. We caught the DHS lying time and time again. DHS tried to falsify, like he had done acts that he had never even done. Caught them on that. Caught the so. The former AG had ordered a multi-county grand jury, and they put his case in it. And this guy was able to get on tape one of the AG's employees saying, well, they visited with the people that were the grand jury was supposed to be done on, and they said he was just a troublemaker and they need to close it. And they closed that. One of their employees is on tape reporting that they just killed the grand jury because the people who are supposed to be investigated by the grand jury told this new AG to do that. So we've got all this evidence, and yet here his kid continues to report abuse. So in July, we filed a grand jury there in Payne County, this case being part of that grand jury. There's all kinds of things. We got rape cases. We got DAs that are getting caught with 150 videos of child pornography. In 2022, one of their assistant district attorneys gets caught in 150 150 videos of child pornography. And here it is, almost 26. He has never been convicted. They still not went to court. It looks like they're covering up. We had a guy the other day that he raped 2 women, strangled them, went ahead and took video of him doing it. So it's not, you got to question, videoed himself doing this. He was found adjudicated as an adult. They go in, he pleads guilty, no contest, pleads no contest, same as guilty. He's going to get 78 years. The judge steps in, goes, no, we're going to do a Youthful Offender Act on him, gives him 150 hours community service, and no record. He'll have no record after he turns 19. So this is a guy rapes 2 women, strangles them. One of them, the doctor said 30 seconds away from death, had to operate on her neck, and this guy's getting nothing. This is what's going on, and I could go on all day with these kind of cases there in Payne County. So we filed the grand jury, and when we file that, this son of his comes and reports more abuse. He takes him down to the police department. They talk to at least 4 officers, I think. We go back to the court and say, hey, you're going to have a hearing before he puts this kid back into abuse to see whether he's being abused, see if he needs to go in his home. That's what legally you have to do. There's no we should. That's legally what they're supposed to do. The judge comes back and says, well, you're the person in charge of this grand jury. You're organizing this grand jury, so I can't rule on this. I go in there, judge, if you're not going to rule, you have to recuse and you have to appoint somebody. They would never appoint anybody. People that were listed on the grand jury came in and issued warrants for him, and they issued about 7 different charges separately. This judge, who wouldn't rule on helping a kid get abused, but he came in and signed off on filing 5 charges of obstruction, where they were saying he wouldn't let law come in and get the kid, and child stealing on the father who's trying to protect the child, who's been up there every day saying, I have this child. Now, how can you steal the child if you're going to the court every day and saying, I have the child, I'm protecting the child? And so they file this and they issue a $1 million bond on this guy, and basically use the bond to say, if you give us the kid, we'll drop the bond. Now, that's called extortion all day long. And again, they've abused their positions. They've lied. They've fraud. Several of them were already mentioned in the grand jury. So he sends his kid. He gives his kid choice. You want to go to the shelter or you want to go back home? The kid says, I'll go to the shelter. That ought to tell everybody quite a bit right there. And so the kid goes to shelter. Now, here's what's funny. The shelter has a standing court order that any kid that comes and reports abuse, so presents themselves as an abused child, that they will be there for 72 hours, that they'll remain for a minimum of 72 hours, I think, and they will get counseling, and that case will be reviewed and investigated. The kid was there 5 hours. Authorities came in, picked him up, never reviewed, never investigated, and sent him right back to the reported home of abuse without any investigation, without any kind of hearing. And again, all of this is illegal. All of this is wrong. They're using the court system, weaponize it to steal this kid from his dad, put the kid back in abuse. And again, they know there's documents where they know this is her own law. The lawyers have admitted that was done and, was reported. And here we are, case after case after case like that. And Mark, I could go on here in Oklahoma, just case after case of them taking people's kids. A lady that she was on drugs, found out she's pregnant, went immediately and checked herself into rehab, stayed at the rehab 9 months to make sure that her baby was born without any kind of drug addictions, to make sure that she was sober, did all that. You can't ask for. That's what a mother would do. That's a good mother right there, that will stop and put the baby before herself. She goes to the hospital, straight from treatment to the hospital. DHS shows up Now, why are they there? Who called them? Why are they there? What purpose? What authority do they have? This baby's not in any danger. This mother did what was right. They take the baby on what authority? No authority. Keep the baby from them for 100, I think 80 days. At 180 days, she says, she goes to one of the supervised visits and says, y'all have no authority to keep my kid. She takes the kid. Please show up, take the kid back. Now, the kid was placed with two same-sex parents, okay? One of them that had an offense, some pedophilia, some sex offense out of Kansas. And so he moves to Oklahoma with his partner. If I was betting, I would say that the sex offense was on the younger partner. And so he becomes a school teacher. They're giving him kids to watch. He takes his kid on a cruise with them and molest another kid. The feds pick him up, I think, somewhere, one of the Caribbean islands in there. They fly this couple and this kid back to Moore. They file charges on him in about 9 days, I think. And the older of the couple, the one that was perping on these kids, ends up killing himself. And then the younger partner takes the kid and runs off. So here we are, that these parents do not have their kid. And why is DHS? And again, if parents don't agree with same sex, and they're supposed to have some say in where their kids are going and what's going on. Mark, these are the type of cases that we're seeing in DHS. We're seeing, foster care. Where are the kids going? Where are the kids being reported? And this is across the nation. This is not just Oklahoma.
JJ, sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to compute some of that, and the fact that someone had committed the crime that you described in another state. Where had they committed that?
Which case on the?
In regard to the same-sex couple, that someone who was a teacher, where did they commit that crime? In another state? What state?
So it's Kansas. So in Kansas, he commits this crime, and then they do a pretty good job of covering it up. There's some evidence that happened, and so he moves with his partner from Kansas to Oklahoma. And again, they move to Moore. He becomes a school teacher, and they get this kid from DHS, and then they go to a cruise. And he's on the cruise maybe 2 days and molest another kid. Now, again, if you know very much, I've been in law enforcement 35 years. I've worked with a lot of sex offenders. And for him to groom a kid and, and molest a kid within 2 days, that's telling you that this guy is a pedophile. He's not just some, it just happened. And we're seeing a pattern of abuse that tells you that he is a pedophile, and DHS is placing children with same-sex couples that are pedophiles, and nobody's calling them to task. That there's nobody making them answer for what they're doing. And now, Mark, this is a big deal with all of these agencies. So what's happened? We think deep state. Mark, when you talk deep state, you think Washington, D.C., you think the CIA, you think the FBI, you think these big conglomerates. Mark, deep state is in every state. And right here in red Oklahoma, you have DHS, you have DOC, you have mental health. You go over and you say, I'm an elected official. You go over and say, hey, I was told an officer got assaulted. I want to see the body cam. Well, you can't have that. That's an ongoing investigation. Or,
JJ, could you define DOC? Excuse me, because could you define DHS?
Right. DHS is Department of Human Services,
right,
or the Department of Corrections, or the Department of Mental Health. So all of these departments, when you go over and you say, I want to see this case right here, I want to see this case, they will tell you, oh, that's confidential. Oh, that's under investigation. Oh, if we let you view it, you can't get a copy of it, and you will have to sign a non-disclosure. Now, we're talking open records. We're talking about stuff that is open records. And they're telling me I've got to sign a paper saying I cannot discuss this with anybody. You know, who are they? I mean, they act like they are top secret, black ops, offices. It is ridiculous. But I have emails where our own House leadership is making agreements with them to let them get away with this. This is what's happening, is nobody can hold them in check. Nobody can verify what's going on. Nobody can look at all of these horrendous, violated, abusive cases, abuse of their offices, and nobody can put them in check because our own government, for some reason, has decided to let them go and won't let them be held accountable. Now, we had an AG come in, oh, we're going to be the champions of open records. That's the biggest lie ever told. And so I've had to sue them. I've sued the DAs. I've sued the Department of Corrections. I've sued the House of Representatives, my own leadership, in order to make certain that we get these records out. And it's not about any one record. It's about the process. It's about how dare these agencies do this and cover up rapes, cover up murders, cover up, child abuse and all of these things. And while we sat on the sidelines, so we went ahead and filed a second grand jury that calls every one of these people. We put the Oklahoma Supreme Court justice on there for allowing, they've all been notified of this. They've allowed it to happen. We've reported it to the judicial complaints. They've allowed it to happen. We've told it to the AG. He's allowed it to happen. His assistant's been part of that. We filed on him. We have the Speaker of the House. We have the former Speaker because they've been notified, and all of this has happened under their watch. We couldn't put the governor on there. It's been under his watch, but we put multiple judges. We put DAs. So we're calling out the whole bunch of them. We called out lawyers who facilitate this. So when I say that we filed a grand jury and that we put it practically on anybody who's anybody in Oklahoma politics, that's not an overstatement. We have filed something that is going to change this state, I believe. And it won't just be about Payne County. It won't just be about the cases that we file on, because those cases are going to reveal the magnitude of what that's just going to open Pandora's box, is what I'm going to say.
JJ, I mean, I find this horrifying. We have some of the same problems over here, but with certain conduct that carries on. I find it quite incredible, because, as you say, if someone commits a crime in another state, it's just understanding your system. Then they can go to another state and try and hide that behavior because you are a continent in itself. You are a vast country, right? Yes. So to give me an idea, I think if you're flying from California from west to east, that's a 7-hour flight, believe it or not. So yeah. Give me an idea. If you're at the top of the Oklahoma state and you were driving down to the southern border of Oklahoma, how many hours would it be to drive from north to south? And then I'll ask you about west to east. I'm not,
north and south's a little easier to go through. You're looking at probably about 6 hours to cross north to south, maybe 5. You might could do it in 5 if you didn't get a whole lot of traffic. According to which way you're going, you can go 35 or you can go 69. It'll pretty much take you, north and south like that. Now, if you go east to west, you can catch 40. But now, if you're really saying all the way out, you got to include the Panhandle. And right. Include the Panhandle, which is a little area up there they used to call no man's land. If you go up to there, if you go from down in the southern corner and you go up to that other corner, you're talking about a good 8.5-hour trip, probably.
Well, to give you an idea, that is like driving from London to well up into Scotland. right? So it's a big drive, but you Americans are very used to big drives because you drive all over your country because you are that big. But the reason why I ask is it gives an idea of the geography. It gives an idea of who can hide. It gives an idea of what you're up against, because how many people live in Oklahoma? There is plenty of land that you can go and disappear. So what's the population of Oklahoma?
About 4 million, and if that'll kind of just give perspective. If you went down just below us, about 2 hours from where I'm at, you have Dallas, Texas. Dallas, Texas, that city, roughly, I can't remember whether it's Dallas, Fort Worth. I think it's just Dallas has 6 million in it, just right there. So that city has more people, 2 million more than we have in our entire state. And then if you're looking at, we're talking about coming from Kansas. So you have transition from state to state, trying to get those records. Now, we do have a pretty good system, law enforcement system, that in the FBI and the OSBI, where we do, we have a law enforcement system. It's called OLETs, that basically only a law enforcement can use. We can pull these guys up and see. So DHS, when they're doing background investigations on people, I would assume, and we always want to be careful in assuming, but they should be able to access that when they're doing background checks on these foster care parents to see what kind of background they have. And on this one, I think they should have picked that up. There should have been some flags on that. Again, you always say they can drop the ball. So if you have one of these cases fall through the cracks, you say, okay. The problem is that we see it as a continual pattern constantly, not just in one state. If you look, kids disappearing out of the foster care system is a problem in every state, is my understanding. And again, what records do we have to keep these kids? Who's going out and check on these kids to verify that they're there, that these people aren't just turning in money and the kids have left, or something's happened to the kids. So again, we've got DHS is just too big. That's another problem. There for quite some time, Oklahoma wanted to consolidate all these offices and say, well, we'll have less administration and it'll be, it'll operate better. That was a bad. You don't get less administration. You get more conglomerate, huge upside down agencies, all administrators, no workers. And again, you can't hold.
Sorry, JJ. When you say DHS is too big, is it too big in Oklahoma, or you're talking? Right.
So in Oklahoma, and I suspect, I hadn't looked at other states, but I suspect that even Washington, I suspect that all the states are the same. Mark, what you had, I used to, I have a business minor there. I took several different kind of areas. I wasn't sure when I was in college which direction I was heading. I got in law enforcement, liked it, stayed in that. But I've got a minor in business. One of the things we were looking at, I was in there right around 89. And so, again, when you're looking at a lot of these companies in the 80s were going bankrupt, your G's and your Plymouths, your big companies. And what happened to these big companies? They got administrators. They got so top heavy in the administration that they didn't have the workers. And so what they call that is an upside down pyramid. So more of the administration, high level, costly jobs with no people doing the actual boots on the ground work. And then when the boots on the ground are trying to tell them, hey, this ain't working, the mid management doesn't want upper management to think there's a problem, so they don't tell anything. So that's what we have in every one of these agencies. We have the top agencies coming into the government saying, oh, JJ's crazy. JJ just likes to hear himself rattle and everything is great. We got wonderful, no problems. Y'all need to just let us keep on, and y'all need to keep JJ away from us. Don't let him have records. All these others that won't see records, if they're told, well, that's confidential. They're letting it go. There's a few of us that say, no, that ain't going to work. That's a lie. And we're going to fight you over it. And what the deal is, there's very few of us that are fighting them to call them out and find out the corruption. But we're going to get it done. It's going to get done.
Do any of, excuse me if this is a bit of a naive, stupid question, but, and I've just pulled up, I do apologize if people think I'm not paying attention. I am. I'm also communicating to friends of ours going, what is going on? Get that right. Bless them. Right. I appreciate that. But I've just pulled up a map of America. Now, do you ever have conferences where you try and get all the people that have the same responsibility in what you're tackling? Do you try and get them all in a room? Of course, not publicizing where that is, but do you try and get them in that room to then go, how can we help to fight this? It is a bit of a leading question, how we can fight this across the state, because it is challenging for you as a country because of the vastness of you. You are so vast, and it is so, as we're finding with the scandals up in Minnesota, with the scandals elsewhere, with the amount of illegals that have come over into Texas, for argument's sake, and other aspects of the southern border, people can go and hide. You know as well as I do that we've then had jihadist groups in the middle of nowhere in America and all of this. And at the moment, we're all deeply concerned because we don't know who is in America at the moment after the Biden regime over the last 4 years, and people that wish to do harm to America. And I refer to what we've just seen on the appalling events on Bondi Beach in Australia. So, and I do not want to see that. We've just seen the appalling where two National Guard members were attacked in Washington, D.C. One has died. And there's other events that have happened. So do you try and get people together so you can work across, as you've said, work across these state lines? Because if I'm looking at, of course, Oklahoma, if I'm looking at that map, as you very kindly said, JJ, you know, where you are, we've got New Mexico, we've got Texas, we've got Oklahoma, we've got Arkansas, right? And so
Louisiana, Missouri, Kansas, all of those border Oklahoma. Yeah.
So are you able to get people together?
Mark, let me tell you a little story. I went to a little kind of gathering there in Oklahoma at the Capitol, and what they want to do is they want to get all the public safety, what we call the experts or the public safety elected officials all in one room to have a discussion, kind of what we're talking about just in Oklahoma. Okay. And so I'm sitting in that room and I'm looking around the table, probably 30 plus in there, 34, I think, if I remember right. And of course, the governor and some of the governor's staff were all in this meeting, and they're going around the table and they're talking about, well, we've got this copper bill that we're going to make it illegal to steal copper. And what that was about, some people went in there and tore down a radio tower that happened to be in the district I represent. And then they stowed it all and they took it down to Texas, and sold it. And they couldn't get any charges filed. And so they were going to pass this new bill. And so they discussed that. Then they discussed this new DUI bill that they wanted to increase the penalty on DUI. I listened to that. After about, I don't know, an hour or so in there, I finally told the governor, I'd sat down there and never said a word. And I said, hey, Governor, I said, I've sat here till I'm about to blow up. I said, is it all right if I say something? And he said, JJ, we all thought you were sick because you ain't said a word. I said, well, Governor, I want to tell you that little copper deal happened in my district. And I love the bill. I'm going to vote for the bill. That's fine. I said, that's all good, mine. But I said, listen, it's illegal to steal. Stealing is illegal. The DA could have filed that all day long. You don't need a new bill. You need the DA to do their darn job. You know what I'm saying? And going to Texas makes it a federal crime. You could have turned it over to the feds. The feds should have got involved in that. Texas could have filed on them having stolen stuff. The whole system failed you. That ought to tell you something. we ought to be looking at the system and not trying to create another law that they won't file anyways. Even when you get it passed, you already got some. I said, another DUI law. Heck, we got, how many DUI laws do you need to have just enforce the ones you got? And I said, Governor, I'm going to ask y'all a question, and I will see if anybody in this room can answer me. Now, I'm looking at 34 of who's in there on public. This is who's making the laws on public safety in Oklahoma. Maybe 4 of them out of that 34 has worked in the legal system. There's 4 people in that room that actually have some knowledge of what they're talking about. One of that 4 would do whatever they say. Wouldn't matter. He won't use his knowledge. He's got it, but he won't use it because he does exactly. He's a puppet for him, and he does anything, yes, man, all day long. So you can just throw him out of the package. Now, we're sitting in there, and I said, I'm going to ask y'all, I said, how many cases, and we got a new deal here in Oklahoma called McGirt. So again, what's happened is they've ruled that half of Oklahoma is a reservation. So now instead of you being convicted in state court, they got to turn you over to the tribal courts. So now we got all that going on in Oklahoma. It's the biggest mess you ever seen. But I told them, I said, I want to ask y'all, can anybody in this room tell me how many cases have been pulled off of our state court docket due to McGirt? That's a pretty big number. I mean, if you're going to have half your state come under that, you would think they'd have that number. Guess what? Nobody in that room, I was like, nobody even got a clue, got a guess. And the governor goes, well, I guess you got the number, JJ. And I said, well, Governor, I've got Humphrey's number. I said, I have called around, and I think that that's somewhere about 32% is what I think it is. That's my opinion. Now, I could be wrong, and I think y'all owe it to yourself to go find out and get the real number. But I said, let's go back, and 780 is a state question we passed to drop misdemeanor, drop down felony drugs to misdemeanor, $1,000. If you steal $1,000, dropped it to a misdemeanor. I said, how many did that pull off of the, of our criminal docket? Couldn't answer. I said, what about the legalization where you pass medical marijuana? How many did that pull off? So again, I told him, I said, I think I'm conservatively telling you 50% with those 3 numbers, 50%. Now, if 50% of
okay, sorry to interrupt. Want to come back to that, Lewis? I do apologize. Can I bring you in a minute? Just sorry, I do apologize. I'll just let JJ finish the story, then we'll come straight into you. I do apologize, sir.
I'll make it quick, Mark. But here's the deal: we got all of these experts. If 50% of all of the criminal docket has been pulled off, 50%, that's half. And yet, what happened to your prison population? Do you think prison population went up or down during that same period?
Go on.
You would think if you lost 50%, it would go down 50%, or at least close. It went up. It went up. So here's what I'm trying to tell you. You got a lot of people, and when we get together with other states, guess who's in the same room? You got people in there that get these positions, and they get put on these committees, and they get put in all this, and all of a sudden, because they have a title that says they're the public safety, committee chairman or public safety director or something, they all of a sudden now you think they're experts in criminal justice, and they don't know diddly, and that's going on across the whole United States.
Right. And Lewis, if I can bring you on, because you're addressing a very, very interesting part of this that I think is so relevant. JJ, thank you so much for all of that so far. We haven't finished. Lewis, how are you? Thank you for joining us. I do apologize about keeping you waiting.
No, it's fine. JJ's really intriguing, and I love a person that really digs in with the numbers. That's always been.
Well, this is what is really important, and that's why I'm asked. That's why, it was such a privilege to be able to introduce you. Just join up. The same with P. Chambers as well. And then there's other people that are running. So you, just to clarify, I get this right, you are running for governor in California. Dear JJ is running for lieutenant governor of Oklahoma. And I don't know, you're busy this week, especially as you've got a film release coming out, I think, on Wednesday. So I wanted to get straight into that. But I sent you a very interesting comment by Victor David Hansen, the great commentator and lecturer, who is, of course, lives in California. And he was mentioning Mr. Hilton yet again. So, Lewis, I'm just going to ask this. Where is, and it leads into the film, where is the press covering your run? Where is the media covering your run? Where is the local press? Where is the whole of the press over California? Maybe nationally. Please educate me about that. And then I want to get into your film, because I think there's a tie up here.
Well, based on your question, I'd have to say that they're probably all hovered up in a cave in Afghanistan, smoking crack and eating s'mores.
Right.
Because they certainly aren't covering my campaign. Interesting enough, too, we were considered the 14th most recognized candidate November 8th, and now we're the third most recognized conservative candidate with zero media attention. Not one local media has mentioned anything about our candidacy. Not one mainstream media has mentioned anything about the candidacy. Wikipedia banned us. Get this, banned us for trying to get our platform on Wikipedia. Banned one of my assistants for life. Literally, she has a letter said, "We are banned for life." And all we did is just give them the information they wanted. Give us an interview. Give us your platform. Give us this. As soon as we got to the last hurdle, we gave it to them immediately because we had the information. They said, "Sorry, you don't qualify, and you are banned for life." So the suppression of the media is at epic proportions. So I've been in contact with several people from the Bobby Kennedy campaign, previous Bobby Kennedy campaign.
Right.
And they kind of warned me of this. A few of them said, "Lewis, this is a lot worse than even we saw." So clearly we're doing something right. And that's the good thing. So we have a huge outside push to put pressure on. But what it did, and I always think this is a God thing. What it did is it motivated me to start looking into things, because what my wife and I quickly noticed running this campaign is throughout history, or let's just say the last 50 years, mainstream media always pushes 2 to 3 people to the front in a political race, almost as if there are no other candidates that are even running. And those 2 to 3 are generally deep state candidates. So we started to really dig into this, and it seems to be the same all over the place. And the people that have all the money and get positioned up front are generally, especially conservatives, are rhinos, Republican in name onlys, right? That's who they'll give the attention to. So it made me think, I'm like, well, I wonder what else they could possibly do in this. So I started running the numbers on our mainstream media, looking at so-called conservative podcasters and such, and on some other subjects. I said, so where are they on Tina Peters? That should be one of the biggest stories within the last 50 years. Yeah. Total crickets. Your mainstream media doesn't talk anything about it. If they do, I'm talking, by the way, let's be clear. I'm talking about the conservative mainstream media.
Yes, you are.
We know what we get from the liberal mainstream media. I'm talking about the conservative mainstream media, the ones that are supposed to be in like mind. Crickets on Tina Peters. And the 2 stories I found on Fox News, the headlines were a negative take on Tina. Think about that. Then, so I said, okay,
could you describe, sorry to interrupt, could you describe those stories from a negative take? We remember
it's always in the headline, Mark. It's the game. The game is always in the headline because they know 90% of people don't read the story, right?
Right.
So they will, something to the effect, I don't have it in front of me, but you'll see something to the effect is Tina Peters, the far right conspiracy theorist, election case. You know what I mean? So they always tag it with something. So they're trying to control.
Could we just break? Sorry to be pedantic. This is important. But could we just break this down? So this is someone. She's a Gold Star mum. Okay, her job was to make sure that the election was above board in regard to the voting then went on in regard to the voting tally, to say, for argument's sake, if I've got 5,000 residents in this country, in this county, then I should be seeing 5,000 votes. I know maybe that's a bit basic in trying to explain it. That was her job, was the whole thing of watching to make sure that it was absolutely done perfectly. Is that a fair summation?
I would add to that, and securing the data.
Right. Thank
and
you.
then
Yep.
and then, or I think you say over there, data.
Data.
So the
Data.
job, that was her job. And so what happened is, I believe she got a phone call from the upper echelon and said, do not secure the data, which was extremely suspicious, right? She did it anyways, and supposedly she gave it to somebody else for security reasons, right? And then that they went after her hard. So you took a Gold Star mom, grandma actually now, and put her in jail through a very corrupt system. They wouldn't even see the evidence, of course. And now they're putting her in solitary confinement. She used to have lung cancer. It feels like it may be coming back. She's coughing up blood. She's in a 40-degree cell at times with minimal coverage on blankets, because they don't allow that. They put her in solitary confinement. They threaten her. People abuse her. They, in my opinion, are trying to kill Tina Peters.
Kill her.
Right.
And this is the tie-up, like with what JJ is facing, which is this legal abuse within whatever department that you're dealing with within your system. This is total abuse. Correct.
But in regards to the film, the story is not even Tina Peters. The story is the so-called conservative news media, which I call conservative fake news, not covering Tina Peters, not covering the deaths and injuries from the COVID vaccine, not covering the true child trafficking epidemic that's going on.
Yeah.
That is what's happening. And this is Machiavelli. This is what he said. This is the way they run their government. Is that they said they give you two choices, right? Sigmund Freud's nephew, Humphreys, said this is the way they do things. It's absolutely incredible. The CIA and the KGB, it's always this illusion of choice, because that is how you control a population. This is exactly what our conservative fake news is doing. And the film that I'm putting out is called The Psyop of Silence.
Silence.
Exposing the conservative fake news, because people think they're their friend. They're not. If they're not covering just those three stories alone, they're fake news. They're absolute fake news. And nobody has the balls to call them out, because especially candidates in California, because they're so afraid that if by chance they may just get coverage from them, now they won't. Well, screw that. We just need to tell the truth. So that's what we're doing.
So someone has done a document. Well, hasn't there been more than one? Because one I think I caught the end of. There's been a documentary on Tina Peters, hasn't there? Some people have done that, haven't they?
Yeah, so there's documentaries on Tina. I've done documentaries on COVID. I've done documentaries on child sex trafficking. So independently, of course, we're doing it. We're doing a job. The challenge is you have these massive podcasters. You have these massive news conglomerates that are all calling themselves conservative. You've got Fox News, Newsmax, OAM, Gateway Pundit, Blaze. I can go on and on and on and on. Where are the top three stories of our times? How could any of those three stories not be at the top of the news feed every single day? It doesn't make sense unless we're being controlled by the silence of those stories. And that's what's going on. Because the reality, if we the people, I'm talking conservatives, knew about these when they're watching their favorite conservative podcaster with 2 million followers? They're not telling them. If they did tell them, I'll tell you what, I think people would already been standing in front of the jail in Colorado to protest and get Tina out. I believe a lot of conservatives that took the jab would be talking a different angle right now. And I definitely believe people would be fighting against human trafficking. Here's what's interesting, and JJ may know this. I did the stats on this, and I was shocked. The largest percentage of child trafficking, child slavery, sex slavery per capita is in conservative areas, Christian conservative areas. Blew me away. And I went in unbiased. But now, and by the way, that's other than California. California is rampant in it, right? But
where do you go? Sorry, where do you go for these figures? Where do you go and find these figures? Where do you research these figures?
Well, there's many websites that you can find them all over the place. The thing is, I wouldn't use Google. I would use a Yandex. And if you use an AI, there's a way that you can talk to an AI for it actually to do the work. And
when you say a Yandex, I do apologize. I don't know. What do you mean?
Yeah, and this will freak people out. Yandex is a Russian search engine.
Wow.
But it's amazing because they're not covering up any information, right? So you can find things on that. Brave is another pretty good one.
Yes.
Where you can find information in. So, and the key though is how to ask the questions, right? So when I use AI, I say to AI and as a search tool only. And I would say something to the effect, if I were an investigative journalist, where would I find statistics on A, B, and C? Now, if I normally ask it, it's amazing how these AIs completely cover up the truth because they search the mainstream narrative, the narrative that's covering everything up. But if you say something to the fact, like, if you were an investigative journalist, where would you find statistics on A, B, or C? It's amazing what they come up with.
It was a bit like, right, so you're at university, you're doing your PhD or your master's or your PhD. In other words, you've got to do research, and very often what you should have is there are lessons, there is guidance on how you would do it, how you would use the library system, for argument's sake, where you would go for information. And they, in many ways, may say, well, you can, as we use that phrase, I hate it, we can Google it. But you're now, which I find fascinating, is, of course, again, revealing other places to get it. So, right. So you've got this information. What is the information when you're looking at what you are saying is conservative areas? What are you pinning down on that information? What are the questions that you are asking specifically?
What are the questions? Well, I've done hundreds of searches, so that would be hard to say. So I could specifically say how many active child trafficking cases are there in Los Angeles County, right? How many active child or how many child trafficking cases have been solved? What's the percentage of solved? What do you expect are the unreported statistics in regards to child trafficking? And then you have to extrapolate the numbers. Even the UN, I found, which they took down this stat about a year ago, which is not a surprise, but even the UN at one time were saying that only 5% of all child sex trafficking cases are documented. So that you can extrapolate the numbers and do times 20 on anything that you find, right? The UN took it down, of course, after I started to do videos on this. I'm not saying it was me, but the last thing they wanted to do is be pointed to as an avenue of sources. Now, there are actual agencies out there that do child trafficking statistics. There's a bunch of them. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I've researched them and I have their names. Even they say it is a very small amount to what's really going on. And these are the best ones out there. And there's a few underground ones that I speak to monthly, and they say, Lewis, I can't even describe how big of a problem this is. One of them works primarily in catching pedophiles, and they said it's just astronomical. There's one group out there that says they've arrested or found like 32 pedophiles over 6 years. And I've talked to some underground networks. They're like, no, we find hundreds a month, hundreds and hundreds a month that they're catching. So this is a fascinating and disgusting element that we're doing. And the question is, why are none of these stories hitting the conservative news media? Why are they covering it up? And they're not covering for conservatives. That's not what they're doing. Because these are a CIA type controlled media apparatus. What they're doing is they're covering a certain narrative. It's not about covering up the stories. They're trying to drive us in a certain direction. I'll give you a perfect example of what a controlled opposition is. And I think this will resonate with a lot of people. Fox News was a master, and they made a big deal out of it, of taking market share of conservative viewers and galvanizing them in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, right? They would constantly talk about their statistics. Look at, now we have X amount, now we have 40%, 60%, 70% of the market, right? So what controlled opposition really does well is, if you look at it from a marketing standpoint, they actually create share, where they hold share. Because what that does is that prevents people from spending their time elsewhere, right? Because Fox News is their most trusted source. So what they did is, in 2020, they galvanized as much share as they possibly can. And then when it came to the 2020 election results on the day of the election, what was the first news media to declare Arizona for Biden?
Fox News.
Trump loses. It was Fox News. Because that's what controlled opposition does. Because now they've gathered so many, so people go, Fox News said it, it must be true.
Well,
right?
and not forgetting your different time zones between West and East, and who would have began to shut their election facilities, and then influencing in a different time zones from East to West.
No, you're absolutely right. So this was, to me, a controlled operation, and their controlled opposition. It's very, very, very clear. I've done deep dives on Sean Hannity, and to me, my opinion, I think he's a CIA asset. So that tells you the type of people that we're dealing with.
Have you seen his lapel badges?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even worse. So here's what a operation looks like that they don't want. The last thing they want is for we the people to stand up and rise up, right? So I've had several videos with Hannity on Fox News saying it is not appropriate for conservatives to boycott. He said that. We got tons of film. He said it's not appropriate for conservatives to protest. That's not in our makeup, right? Stay home, pray about it, let God take care of it. Think about that. But what should we, the people, be doing? We should be rising up. If you really know what the Matthew 5:5 says, the meek shall inherit the earth. If you really understand the origins of meek, it comes from a horse named Prowse. That horse was the leader of all the war horses in the stable. He was the one that stood up. Jesus called himself meek. Moses was called meek. Are these people weak? Do they not speak up and stand up for somebody else? Of course they do, right? Jesus flipped over tables. The reality is we should be flipping over tables right now. But we're told by conservative news media to stand down. Stand down. Just pray on it. Well, prayer without action doesn't always work in my mind.
Or leave it to someone else, like I'm going to upset people, like the QAnon psyops. Right?
Well, there's Q and there's a non. We have to separate the two, right? Go. So here's a great example, and I've come down on this. So you hear, trust the plan, trust the plan, trust the plan, right? So trust the plan, to me, was completely misinterpreted. Let's assume that Q was actually a military operation. Whatever, we could all agree it's a psyop, whether it's good or bad. We could definitely agree it's a psyop. So I decided to study and say, okay, what do we have here? Because I'm seeing a bunch of people putting on their froggy mask, sitting on their couch and doing jack squat, doing nothing. I go, that doesn't seem appropriate to me. That seems very Bolshevik revolution-like to me, right? So while the Christians were getting slaughtered. They were said, oh, it's going to be fine. Just our big savior is coming. So I decided to study it. Now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they just misinterpreted. All I know is when I put in trust the plan, I think it was in there 40 some times. When I went into their drops and put in searches, when I put in the people, it's in there 142 times. 142 times. And therefore, I came up with the slogan, we the people are the plan. We've always been the plan. President Trump told us on January 20th, 2017, he said, with a military contingent behind him, he said, we gave it back to the people. The problem is we just didn't pick the ball up and run with it.
Right. JJ, at this point, are there, because I really want to get into questions about Lewis's film without him giving too much away. I don't want that because I don't want to spoil that for you. But there's to give some other examples. JJ, are there things that you are really identifying with what Dear Lewis is saying here?
Oh, absolutely. Mark, here's what people need to understand. You need to go back and research. It sounds like Lewis is way ahead of me on this, but I've looked at several of this. I've attended some conferences on this. If you're looking at who actually controls the entire media, we like to think there's hundreds, there's thousands, there's our local papers and our local news stations and our state news stations and all this. But when you start looking at who actually controls, who actually owns all of these, I mean, the conglomerates, it comes down to just a few. And right now,
absolutely,
if you're paying attention right now, there's a huge bill out. They want to own more of them so that they will control the entire narrative. And even things like what we're talking about, Fox, where we come to believe, hey, this is our conservative voice. Lewis just gave the example where they showed you, they showed their hand. They are not the conservative voice. And again, Lewis is talking about where these stories here in Oklahoma, when we're talking about kids, mental health kids being waterboarded at a mental health facility. Guess how many stations in Oklahoma ran that? Hardly none. I think maybe one of them come out with that. You're looking at it. It gets reported on, I think New York Times did an article on it, but Oklahoma doesn't report their own kids being possibly, again, we need to investigate that, but possibly waterboarded. I would say that's a big news station. I would say the grand jury that we just dropped ought to be, I mean, that ought to be your number one story in Oklahoma. And guess what? You don't hear it on none of the news stations are carrying that. So again, it's not only these, when you listen to Lewis, you kind of think, well, that's your big media networks out there. No, it goes all the way to your very local paper, small town paper is bought out by these. And if you don't think we're telling the truth, listen to the media, listen to the same news bites, the same verbatim things. You can't get the same verbatim report from 20 different reporters. And again, that's going on all over.
Let me jump on Lewis. Let me jump on to what JJ said real quick, and then so we get to Doc. I'm really interested in talking and hearing from Doc. But real quick, I'm going to break it down even further, JJ, and you'll probably agree with this. So there's 6 major conglomerates that own 95% of the news media. By the way, that includes the conservative media. So let's go back in time. You may have remembered somebody named Robert David Steele. Robert David Steele said to me via a text, he goes, at 4:05 every single morning, the CIA delivers the headlines to the news media. Okay? So now we brought it from, we have this vast conservative media that we think we trust. Then now we've broken it down to there's 6 that own all of them, including the conservative media. Now we've broken it down. There's a CIA operation involved. And I'm going to give away the end real quick. Now we need to look at the senior executive services, because the SES is really what's under the table funding these operations. And we think these conservative media outlets are on our side. No, This is bread and circus. They will divert their attention from my campaign, from Doc's campaign. They're going to divert it as much as they possibly can because they've already chosen their two rhinos to go through. And this is what we're fighting. So this is why I'm releasing the film Wednesday. It's one of the reasons. They're not talking about true elections. They're not talking about two candidates. They're not talking about Tina Peters. They're not talking about COVID deaths. And they're not talking about child sex slavery. And we, the people, are going to change the narrative on them. I'll leave it to you guys.
No, well, that's why I find it really interesting. Just quickly before I bring Doc on, if you look at the in the early 70s, the whole Ellis papers, and when he about Vietnam and exposing things, and then he went to one newspaper and they said, and they printed it, and then the government, then the administration, then Nixon Wise came against him, got that paper shut down. Then he went to another paper, then they got that shut down. And I think eventually it was like 25 papers printing all this or showing all this. And of course, as you rightly say, things have changed. But even going back to the Clinton era of him turning around and saying, right, I'm now going to change it so that you can own more than one radio station. You know, a certain amount of radio stations is all you could own. Now you could buy up so many. It's been such a, and again, I'm not saying that to be clever, because I'm interested in what's going on your side of the pond. But this is the long game. Doc, thank you for joining us. I hope you are well, sir. I know, like Lewis, like JJ, you're on the campaign trail. I just wonder,
yes,
without
sir.
revealing where you are, just say how many miles you have driven recently, where you've been, what you've been up to, but also to say, as Lewis said, he talked about a few minutes ago about where he is in the pecking order in regard to one of the governor challenges here, and being third in that position. Doc, how much press are you getting locally, you know, and nationally, say within the great state of Texas? How much press are you getting?
Yes, sir. So we're on day 14 of a run right now. This is day 14, heading back 6 hours back to Central Texas. I'm down here in the Permian Basin right now.
Right.
So I went out on a site this morning looking at some rigs.
And just to clarify, I do apologize. Yep. You are running for governor in the great state of Texas. That's what that's the position, sir, you are running for.
And I said this on Steve Bannon the other day. This will answer the second part of your question. Finally broke into the not so much mainstream, but nationwide with Mr. Bannon.
I hear you.
And I did say to him, I'm running as senior public servant because the term governor is just too British for me. You heard me say it before, but it did get a chuckle out of him. So I'll say that.
Good. I hear that. You know, I hear that.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing. We've been blessed in that the local media now, when I drive around, because you know, if you say grassroots, people say, oh, you're going to lose your grassroots. No, I don't believe that. I think that's a we the people campaign. And so when I show up at cities now, local TV stations are there ready to go. Now we've learned the game. We're not in politics. We're just a bunch of military guys that understand politics in the different sense. And it's how to keep the country from being overthrown by a color revolution and a hybrid attack, which includes the Mockingbird media. As I listen to Lewis and JJ, that is something that is disenfranchises and demoralizes a nation. As a Green Beret, I went to foreign countries to protect them, friendly countries, or to countries where the Taliban was ruling or ISIS, and then use the same kind of information operations to get the locals on our side, right? And so that's what that is. This has been going on in the U.S. for a lot longer than I even realized. You go back to the Cloward-Piven doctrine, and we're talking about transfer migration and moving U.S. citizens out with H-1B visas, but then not really teaching our students. Texas is number 40 out of 50 states in education. Well, why is that? Well, now I didn't know. I'm drinking from the same fire hose these gentlemen are drinking from. I'm trying to be plussed up on what they're going up against, and it's not scary. It's chaotic. We can control the controllables, but it's going to take all hands, and that's why I love the fact that I know these two gentlemen, because that's our sister state right there. And I'm technically my home record is Oklahoma. I'm an Okie, so I've just been here long enough to be considered just like they say. Well, I came here as soon as I could. I came here because I was in the Texas National Guard protecting this border, and after 8 years of that, I realized we got a lot bigger fight, and that's why we're in the race. I
Well,
could see the use of
but this is what is really a real privilege for me to sit here and have this three-way conversation, because it is joining all of you up so that you can then encourage each other as well, and then encourage each other, learn from each other, because this is
right.
absolutely vital. And I'm just going to give you some, I might have said this before, interesting information when we talk about Cloward and Piven. You turn to your most northern neighbor, being Canada, right up there.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark Carney's wife, which is Diane Carney, but her middle name is Fox, and her aunt, or a great aunt, no, I think it's her aunt, she's still alive, is Frances Fox Piven of Cloward and Piven.
There you go.
So this is this whole thing, and I'm not saying these things to be clever. I'm frightened by this at times, but it's looking at all these collections, all these connections, all these relationships. You use the important word, which is the color revolution, and what's gone on. We've just seen, as I referenced at the beginning of the show, the appalling tragedy and shooting of Jewish people on Bondi Beach in Australia, yesterday, their time in the morning, with 12 people dead and 30 people injured and children involved in that as well. So we don't know. You are aware of who has come over your border into the great state of Texas and who is then in America. That's why people are sounding the alarm and talking about this. So, Doc, what are your what sort of questions are the local press asking you? What other than the fact that they may say, why are you running? Where is your political experience? What sort of questions are they asking you?
Well, I would say, first of all, political experience is not what we need right now. Catherine Austin Fitts just recently said, it's not an economic problem, it's a political problem. When she was talking about economy, that's her specialty. For me, it actually, not being a politician is actually a plus in the rural parts of Texas. Now, the cities are a little bit different. There's a different flavor. Some of the cities are straight up blue. Austin is blue. San Antonio, 50-50. Dallas is a little more blue than it is red. But so when we look at those things, I have to look at what can I win an off-cycle primary when there's not a presidential race going on. So I just need 1.5 to 2 million voters to vote for me, and I win it. So I'm spending my time bringing them onto my Thermopylae, my battlefield that I understand, right? Because I can't go up against that war chest is somewhere between $50 and $100 million. I don't worry about that. I just understand it's large. And I go, well, which way is the enemy, right? Figuratively speaking. But then I look at what are we hearing? And what we hear is we're tired of politicians. And the number one question I get from people with the media is, this is interesting, is what makes you different than Abbott? And I say, well, I'm not a guy that's going to, by omission, if you will, sense of omission or commission, but by omission, turn my head from something that actually is undermining the safety of this state, right? The Republic of Texas, the state of Texas. This has to be foremost as all of our baselines, because every state now is a border state when it comes to 150 countries that came across that border on my watch. And I know personally that there's probably estimated 30,000 in Texas alone, what I would call the ages of, or could potentially be used as, enemy combatants.
Yes.
Right. I'm not talking about the other millions that were used in the pawns and the Cloward Piven movement, but that's what I see, and I know. That's why I came from that world. As an operator, we pay attention to those things. And on that border, we should have had that foreign terrorist organization on 7 different organizations, not just 2 that the governor recently did because he's going into a primary. We should have had that FTO designation 4 or 5 years ago when we briefed him on it to do that.
The previous man that was in charge of Department of Homeland Security under the Biden regime, who I had to put up with seeing his face when I traveled around American airports in 23 and 24, and I've forgotten his name. Mayorkas, that's it. I'll try not to say it without swearing. It's a family show. But we remember when his videos would come up, but also the way how he was weaponizing immigration, setting up tents, etc., to then pass all these people through straight into Texas and what is going on. Put things in context, as I've said to you wonderfully before. The UK fits into Texas about 2.5 times. At the moment, our MI5, MI6, and other organizations fighting terrorism reckon that they are following up to 40,000 men, women, whoever, right, in our small country. But we don't have I don't believe that we have the resources to even tackle that. And you know what is happening on our border. So it's fantastic that they are coming to you and they are drawing on your life experience, Doc. They're not going, what about this politician? And as we said previously in a discussion, we go back to that senator in 1954 that end up, JFK murder. I'll step in and become president, whose name always escapes me at the moment. But we see that in regard to the power and the play that's happening.
Right.
So in Texas, what is and just to give you another story before I shut up, the mayor of San Antonio that I heard speak in 2023 at the Parliament of World Religions said our role is not to ask for papers. Our role is to ask how we can help. And he was referring to the illegal immigration in his being mayor of San Antonio alone, that was 250,000 people.
Right.
23, he said, pass through. I know how vast America is, how vast your state is. I can't even get my head around that. Where do 250,000 people disappear to, Doc? So what are the prime concerns of people that they are raising with you at this present time?
Correct. Yeah, the great question. The number one thing that I hear amongst all citizens in Texas is we actually have, this is a question I get, we actually have Sharia law courts in Dallas. Yes, you do. You have two. We actually have enclaves of Sharia law focused Muslims that have come in under, not necessarily, they've obfuscated the jihadi flag, but they're still following in line with the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, we saw what happened when we declared that, or the governor did, which is great, foreign terrorist organization. But now there's going to be a lot of lawsuits ensuing. So there you go, taxpayer money going out for lawsuits, things like that, when it doesn't require that. What it requires is an executive order to say, if they are foreign terrorist organizations, we must develop the plans for, and we've already been doing it, since I was a soldier, watching, what was coming in, to then tell our law enforcement partners, you need to investigate this. And me as a guy that handed over personally the Tren de Aragua, which is not Muslim, but it still came from Venezuela. But here's the problem. Many of those people that were documented from Venezuela they were aligned with Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah is an Iranian Shia-backed terrorist organization. Because they learned a little bit of Spanish, they could come across our border with documentation from Venezuela, and they crossed right in seeking asylum, right? And that was a problem set for us, especially when we're looking at 12,500 people a week coming across the border. Trump has put a tourniquet on it, slowed it down, but those actors are here. So now we got the 100,000 tiny cuts that we've got to address. And those things are what I would say, some of which cells inside this nation that are standing by to do what? I don't know. But we can't go with hope. Hope is not a plan. I used to tell my troops that all the time. Sure hope the enemy doesn't attack tonight, sir. Well, hope is not a plan. We have to have those plans in intricate pace plan, primary, alternative, contingency, emergency. And that's the focus for me. It's like being a wartime governor, but the war is a hybrid color revolution, if you will. And it's not really the best term to use, but it's the best that I can get out there where people will understand it. Because there's so much more. It's 5th generation warfare on steroids.
Yes.
There you go. Yep.
Absolutely. Go, Lewis. Lewis.
You're right, Doc. You are so on point. It is color revolution and 5th generation warfare, and it is on steroids. And whoever you suspect to be your friend probably is not. And that's the game. That's the game that is played. The infiltration is huge. I want to address something in Texas because I've been calling out for years through documentaries and so on and so forth. For 5 years I've called Abbott the Lindsey Graham of governorship, right? Because He's talked a huge game, and then there's nothing to follow it. And I've interviewed Border Patrol agents. I've been on the border, and I've seen uh, over 200 guys on the border to about 210 guys on the border and about 7 women. That was it. Out of 217, you had 210 of them that were fighting age men. That's the top side of the border, y'all. The high value targets, the one that for some reason nobody wants to talk about, the high value, I should say, commodity is children and women, young women. Those are going under the border. They don't go over the border. And these are things that Abbott, we know, was aware of at least 4 or 5 years ago and would not address publicly whatsoever. So again, this is another conservative in sheep's clothing, and this is the type that things that we really need to pay attention to. I'm sure that one of the reasons why Doc is getting so much attention, it's not just Pete. I don't think it's just because you have great solutions. I think it's because you live in authenticity. And authenticity right now, I think we are in the age of authenticity, where people are actually craving for somebody to just be honest with them and tell the truth.
That's it, brother. Right there. I see that with both you and JJ. You guys are just real people. I mean, I don't know JJ, but I know him through friends. And you guys are just walk the walk and talk the talk. And that's the kids, that's the true kids that enjoyed listening to Charlie Kirk, right? It was the kids that I see now that are coming up, like my son. He's 25, going in the military, and he's a great kid. He's got his college degree. He's a graduate of University of Oklahoma. These are just great kids who are looking for that authentic person. You're just going to tell them the truth, right? And I was just in a town hall meeting out here, and I'm out here in the Permian Basin, and they're tired of it. They're tired of just I'm going to drop the taxes, but you don't have a plan. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to decrease taxes. You don't have a plan. Come on.
Yeah.
You should have a plan.
Right. Already. I've had 17 plans. 17 wasn't intentional, but I had 17 plans or solutions on my website for five months. I must be doing something right, because Bianco just stole one this week and Hilton stole another one. So, and the good news is they're timestamped. So history will bode well in regards
trademark.
to that. Yeah, it's very important though. And there's an atmosphere right now, which is beautiful. People say, Lewis, you're the anti-politician. There you go. That's Bingo. What we need to be. I mean, I will throw up in my mouth when we talk about politics, because it's the last thing that I would have ever pictured myself doing. It was just a calling, and therefore I'm here. I've got 2 Marines and an airman as children, right? So and beautiful 4 other beautiful children. So we have a lot to fight for. But right now, it's about just doing the job, buckling down. But we cannot BS the people. In fact, somebody said, Lewis, you know what? You're not governor. You're looking to be guardian. And I'll say, I take it.
What a fantastic comment.
I'll be guardian of we the people. That's all I care about. I went as far, and I know it may sound like semantics. I tattooed it on my arm. It says we the people. So when somebody shakes my hand and they want to offer me some money or compromise me, I'll say, nope, this is who I answer to. God first, and we the people. It's pretty simple. So I'm thrilled that you're running, and JJ, and people that just want to be down home, good old boys. That's right. I'm in California, and I'm still a good old boy. In fact, they used to think I was from Texas, because I actually I used to adjust mechanical insurance, and my territory was Texas for General Motors, and I got a Southern draw when I was 19. It was the funniest thing you'd ever see. But anyways, we have to be real, but we have to be solution based, right? My background's a troubleshooter, and that's what I'm going to give to California, and I'm thrilled to see 2 gentlemen like yourselves running also, because this is our time, and not our time, we the people's time.
Mark, one of the things that I'd like to add to that's what I was talking about earlier. You have so many politicians that they put in these positions like they're experts. They have no answers. All they do is call out, and they get people excited. They make a lot of noise. If you see the politicians, they call the problem out. They call the problem out. They talk about the problem, but they have not one solution. I used to have a boss and he would not let you come in and make a complaint unless you had a solution, because he said that if you don't have a solution, you haven't thought long enough about the problem. So everything that I bring, I have a solution, and I laugh. It may not be the greatest plan, but at least I have a plan. That's what I tell everybody. At least I do have something that we can begin to work on. And I'm very open to always listen, because that's how you get a better plan. Listen to what people say, but we need boots on the ground. We need politicians to go back and talk to the people and be willing to listen to the people actually boots on the ground doing the problem, working in those areas, whether it be border or whether it be human trafficking, whether it be Department of Human Services, Department of Corrections, mental health. And a lot of these homeless and things like that go back to our mental health problems, our drug problems, our law enforcement. If you get those things right, you take care of a lot of these problems that we're seeing. And so they're all interconnected. And if you do right, and everybody wants to throw money at it, we've got enough money out there on it. You just need to have a plan how to actually take that money out of that Capitol building and out of all of those big bureaucratic agencies, and take that money. Republicans say they're for less government and local government, but anywhere you go and look at them, they're building more government right there and not putting it back with the people. And that needs to be what our plans are, how to put it back, boots on the ground, where the job is actually being done and where the rubber meets the road, and where we need to address all these issues. That sounds pretty plain, but that's what we need to do.
Well, I think here's a question for all of you, and we'll go through this. So with the fraud that has really seems to have hit suddenly within the media in regard to Tim Walsh, in regard to Minnesota, in regard to Ilhan Omar and all the rest, even though that I believe that began to hit court-wise, litigation-wise in 2022, and then suddenly it's gone full media for whatever an interesting reason. And this man was never held to account before he became the Kamala vice president nomination run. So, guys, what impact has this exposure in Minnesota had on discussions in California, on discussions in Texas, on discussions in Oklahoma? Are people discussing this? Because if they're looking at Minnesota, what is going on in all your other great states? Because it must be going on. Do one of you want to just express an opinion on that? And just want to hear all of your opinions on that. Lewis, I'll come to you.
Well, yeah, California's pristine. There's no waste, fraud, and abuse in this state whatsoever.
Sorry,
none, zero. I don't know where that would absolutely come from.
Is that a line from Monty Python?
It has to be. So I call it WFA. The waste, fraud, and abuse is so high here. We're looking at, get this number, potentially 70 to 80% of our expenditures is waste, fraud, and abuse. Yes. So we're going to super doge the budget. And when you extract all the waste, fraud, and abuse, JJ nailed it. There's more than enough money. There's never been a money issue, right? If anything, we should be able to get rid of income tax and get rid of property tax, reduce state taxes, readjust things just based on spending appropriately. In California, there's two. One thing I'm already doing is within 2 weeks, I'll have a website called Exposure. So we're going to be exposing all of these criminals on a website, and then it's going to go over to exposure.ca.gov when we're in office. But then in addition to that, what we're going to do is we're going to take the complete budget itemized, and we're going to put it online for we the people to look at anytime they want. So they can hold who accountable? Me, because I work for you. They're going to hold me accountable. There'll even be a comment section that'll say, Lewis, your administration spent $600 on a chair that I found on Amazon for $29.99. And I'll say, I got to look into that.
I love it. Yeah.
That's something I have to take care of, right? So I have an attorney that's been investigating school bond theft for a long time.
What do you mean school bond theft? What do you mean?
I'll give you a quick idea because I don't want to dominate the show. But by the way, this one single case has been at the AG for 9 months and they won't talk about it.
Right.
Think about that. That's corruption. So anyways, the school bonds, the way it works, let's say they need $50 million to build a high school.
Gotcha.
Right? They'll put that bond up for $100 million. And virtually everybody that sponsors the bond is an accountant, an engineer, a contractor, or somebody that is going to get that contract upon that bond getting approved. And we have the records, by the way. I have all the names, how much money they put towards the marketing. We've got it all. I have it personally, right? I'm just ducking in case.
Yeah, just pray for your protection in Jesus' name, amen.
Right. So we have that. So I'm going to give you the way it works. So, and this is what's scary. By the way, we're investigating multiple states. This is going around across all of the states.
Right.
It's not just California, but I'm going to give you a microcosm of one city. So they asked for $100 million. The actual cost that it ended up to build was about 67 to 70 million. So, okay, well, if they estimated it to be 50, how did it get to there? Because instead of charging their normal retail rates, these same dirty contractors charge 1.25 to 1.5 times what they normally charge. Now there's still a $30 million delta. Where did that go? Disappeared. But it gets worse. That $100 million bond, they've manipulated over and over through refinancing and interest to put it on a 15, another 15, maybe a 30 year. Now you're spending $300 to $400 million for a high school that should have cost $50 million to build. Think about that. But you know what they all have in common? And this is where JJ and Pete, you could take a look, because here's a trigger. They all have this in common. And I can send you guys websites to look for this. What they all have in common is they have a superintendent that's not a credentialed teacher. By the way, most school districts, you have to have 2 credentials to be a superintendent, 2 teacher credentials. They don't have any. Most of them came in as an interim appointment after them firing somebody that was credentialed. See the pattern here? And then they were implanted as a superintendent. In California, most of these, and there's hundreds of billions of dollars of theft in this, have 5 or 6 of the exact same attorney firms putting these things together for them.
Right.
This is corruption at the highest level. Can you imagine if we were actually paying the right amount for a high school and that other amount could have went to actually putting more teachers in or extra teacher aid, maybe keeping music and auto shop in the school, maybe getting rid of Common Core and actually teaching. It's amazing. So that's just a microcosm of what's going on from a corruption standpoint.
Right. Doc, are you is there any reflection on what's happening in Minnesota, in Texas? Go.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to caveat a little bit of what Lewis is saying there, because in Texas, there's a group up in North Texas, Dallas area that's looking specifically into the school bonds. There are some counties in Texas. We got 254. We have 1,207 school districts in Texas. These superintendents, once again, there's a problem there. I just wrote down a note. Let's check on their credentials. It's not something I've dumped in deep on the credential side of the superintendents, but the 80% of school taxes in the state of Texas go to administrative costs. Now, if we're sitting at number 40 out of 50, we should be doing better. Well, what are we doing? We've centralized education at the state level, not at the local level. So our Texas Education Administration, who's involved in a lot of that 80%, right? And then school bonds, which are nearly insolvent in some of these counties, because you got 2 examples in Texas. One is 3,000 kids, another one 2,000 kids in a school who has a $20 million and a $10 million stadium that was built. Now, we love football in Texas. I get it. But when we're sitting at number 40, should we not prioritize then in the state level, at the local level, our teachers and what's spent in the classroom? Let's turn that 80% around. That's just looking at those numbers. So very good idea, putting that out there for we, the people, to see so that they can be. And here's the beautiful part about our jobs, right? Both lieutenant governor and governor is you have the bully pulpit. I have veto power as well. Now in Texas, the legislative power lies mostly with the with the lieutenant governor, but have the veto power. So when we look at what's happening and people are telling me all the time, yes, I'm hearing it all the time. What about Dearborn? Is that going to happen here? Could possibly, if we don't do something about it. What about Minneapolis? Is that going to happen here? Could possibly, if we don't do something about it, because those people are going in now, and I call them lily pads. They're coming in from foreign countries, and they are a lot of them from the Middle East, and they are taking up the positions in the school boards and on the county commissions and the city level managers. So then we see that, of course, they're going to err on the side of their own policies and changing one particular place in Richardson, Texas, and all the street signs are Muslim names, right, in this particular town. And so now it does then segregate out that for then to have those schools. Now in Afghanistan, when I was a soldier there, we looked at the madrasas, which is what they're doing here, Sharia schools. And we have $25 million of taxpayer money going to those schools because of the school voucher program, because the way it was written, it's very Marxist in nature. You know, as a Republican and conservative, you should say, well, don't they have freedom of choice? Not when the rules are written, because the devil's in the details, right? The devil's in the details. And I'm convinced that the devil lives in Austin, Texas, right there, in our legislature, right? So for me, I have to look at that and go, well, common sense. We shouldn't have Sharia schools because madrasas created our next generation of fighters in Pakistan that came across the border that we fought over 20 years in Afghanistan. So when you radicalize someone, that's where that takes place. So when we do know that there's a Muslim Brotherhood thing, and our people then ask me, as original question was proposed, that there should be some kind of a concern for that as a people, as a guy that listens to the people and has the bully pulpit, if you will, or the cheerleader for the state. All I need to do is talk about, what are the legislators doing, and let's embarrass them so they get voted out of office, right? I'm not going to use coercion. I'm not going to use money in some kind of deep pocket that I have to go after that particular seat and turn a conservative into a rhino because I have a lot of money and I'm going to go after him by supporting his opponent. That's what currently happens in Texas. I don't want that. What we have to do is use the people, to say, hey, do you know this, right? We're nearly insolvent in these schools with regard to school bonds. Yes. Okay. Well, if you don't, then yes, now you do know. And so how can we fix that? And there are certain commissions and things that I can then call as an authority of the governor to say, hey, I need 24 citizens to work on this problem set, because that's what a commission is allowed, and then to come up with a solution to avoid this and then enact that policy to go against what is currently out there that is allowing for $24 million of taxpayer money to go to these Sharia schools, or I call them madrasas, which radicalizes people.
Well, the other thing as well, and I can see that with the American people, with the public in each of your individual states, that when they see what you want to
I'm not hearing you, brother.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I don't. Doc, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. What is exciting is that the American public can get behind what you are proposing, and IT then allows them to have access and then can report in fraud for you to follow up, because I know you've already thought of that. But
Mark, I'd like to say something on that. Finding the fraud is not hard. You know what I'm saying? Listen, I've turned in COVID millions that we caught. I mean, dead banger. I've recovered 43 million out of the Department of Corrections budget to get a raise with no new appropriations, no new taxes. Found it right there, hidden in there. Found much more, actually 270 more. I found billions in broadband that I've turned in here lately. And Mark, listen to me. If you're tracking one horse is kind of hard to track. But if you're tracking 1 million horses, it leaves a pretty wide trail. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Even a guy like me can track, I'm no accountant, but if you're stealing millions, it don't take a really great individual to track that down. It's not the problem of catching it. It's a problem of prosecuting and holding people. And when you see the kind of abuse that we're seeing in Minnesota, Washington, or Oklahoma, and we call these people out, we catch them red-handed, hand in the cookie jar, ain't no doubt, and nobody, our AGs, our government, they do absolutely nothing. And what happens when they come out publicly with Doge, when they come out publicly with what we're seeing in Minnesota, and nothing happens to those people. Nothing happens to those government people. The people of the country, of our states, lose faith in government. They don't want nothing to do with government.
Yeah.
Sick of government because they see the astronomical failure. We got to get our court system back. We got to go after the people, whether it's government officials or who it is. If they're guilty of stealing public money and breaking the public trust, they need prosecuted, and we need to hold their, accountable.
Feet to the fire. And I can really identify with what you've just said, JJ, because last year in our election, last year on the 4th of July, deliberately chosen, I believe, 2024, was the fact that 38.9% of people in this country that were eligible to vote decided not to. So you're looking at nearly 40% of people decided not to vote. So in the end, because we are an inverted commas democracy or a constitutional republic with alienable rights, God-given rights, and we are basically a mob. So the fact that the mob is completely and utterly failing, but on the other hand, it's what they want, because they want people to be totally and utterly disaffected. And I suppose I'm using humor here, and it's to support you, JJ, in this, that in the end, I think I could see the fact that for juries in court, that you'll be having to pack them with Bigfoot just to get the justice that you then seek, that you'll just see 12 Bigfoot characters on that jury, because at the moment that is what's frustrating people, that you cannot get the justice.
Well, I've got a grand jury petition filed, and the government is coming in. Why should the government should help you get the petition. The government should want that. Our founding fathers put a process for the people to call up and hold accountable. And yet, guess what? When you try to carry out that process, who are you fighting? You're fighting the judicial. You're fighting the government. Oh, you got to have this number. Oh, we increased that number twice. Oh, you didn't do this. Oh, we're going to let this person. Where is that found anywhere in any of that says, here's how to go get a grand jury petition? It's not. The government has gotten away, because the last thing they want is a bunch of individuals holding them accountable and looking at the actual facts. It doesn't take a genius to look at when, 200 or 300 or $1 billion, $3 billion gone. Any common sense will tell you somebody's tapping the till. You know what I'm saying? And it should be investigated. Absolutely.
And we've got a situation where you said in Minnesota, they've turned around and said, well, we've got 1 billion, but that could easily escalate to 5 or 6 billion. And then where has that money gone? And when it's then linked, potentially, it looks like, with the discussion of Al-Shabaab and going out to a terrorist organization in Somalia, you have a major problem, as we have a major problem, because so much has been hidden. In our last sort of 3-4 minutes, and just to say, it's been an amazing conversation, a real privilege for me to sit here and have an incredible conversation. I just want to encourage you, and I know it will happen, that all three of you will continue to have this conversation and support each other in what you're doing. There is one person I think at some point I need to try and get hold of, which is a gentleman called Dean Oddle, who is running for lieutenant governor in Alabama. So it'd be lovely to try and get hold of him. So Doc, where can people find your campaign, follow you, reach out for you, encourage you, support you financially, etc.? Where can they find you?
Right. It's Doc, D-O-C, Pete, P-E-T-E, Chambers with an S at .org. And that's really where you find me. There's a donation page there. There's links to all of the policies that we're working on, and they're continuing to come out. We got a robust H-1B policy just came out today or this week, and we'll continue on. But yeah, that's it. DocPeteChambers.org.
Thank you. And when are the governor elections? When are those elections?
For me, it's the 3rd of March, which is the day after Texas Independent Day, the 2nd of March, 2026. Right. And it's off-cycle primary, so you got to get out and vote. Every vote counts.
So you'll be showing the Will Smith film of Independence Day as a tribute, although made in the mid-80s. God, I'm dating myself. You'll be showing that.
We'll call the third Texas Liberation Day.
Brilliant. Lewis, thank you, Dot. Lewis, you've got an important film coming out on Wednesday. Where can people find this important piece of work? Whether can they find you? How can they support you, sir?
Thank you. The film's called The PSYOP of Silence, Exposing the Conservative Fake News. And that'll be coming out Wednesday on my channel, ScrewBigGov, ScrewBigGov.com, and all of our social media, and 30 other major podcasters are going to be putting it on their channels also. So far, it'll probably be 100 by the time it's said and done. Everything, if anybody's ever followed me, I do for free. We're not charging for any of this stuff. We just have to get the information out there. I want to put something in perspective really quick. You keep mentioning about this Minnesota fraud, right? They're estimating that could probably be about 10 billion.
Right.
So here's some perspective. If they know about 10 billion, there's probably 100 billion in fraud.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you, I love numbers. If you take our United States population divided by the Minnesota population, right? That's 60 times more. So we're talking about $6 trillion in this fraud is probably more likely across the United States. And numbers like that are important because Minnesota is just a microcosm of what's going on. They're just getting caught right now. That's the only difference. And this is the type of stuff we're going to end. So if anybody wants to support the campaign or follow us or see the events I'm going to, whatever it is, hermsforkelly.com. And I'm actively going to be looking to align myself with people like JJ and Doc and so on and so forth, because it doesn't matter if we're in different states. If we're like-minded and it's about we the people, we need to be able to support each other.
Have you got people praying for you, Doc? Have you got people praying for you, Lewis? I'm going to come to you, JJ, in a minute, but that is also important.
Yeah, I have.
Is that happening?
I have prayer vigils daily, from what I hear. It's not sometimes in my inner circle, which is fantastic, and then some outside. They said, "Hey, we just had 100 people online praying for you all at the same time." So I feel extraordinarily blessed in regards to that. I hope they pray for we the people, because I'm merely a conduit for that.
That's it. Well, you definitely live the servant's heart, brother. Same here, we do. And then when we break, we get done at the end, and these towns literally say, "And now we're going to pray for you, Doc." And everybody comes up and stands around and prays. It's just overwhelming, and it really is humbling to know that, if you're authentic, you're going to get that extra. And as watchmen, Ezekiel 33 watchmen, it is our duty to inform. Otherwise, it's on our head. So I appreciate those people.
I hear you loudly referencing those verses. That's really important. JJ, where can people find you? Can you turn and show that great sign behind you again of the Humphrey sign?
That's going to be my representative sign.
Right.
So, hey, where you can find me is go to JJ4OK.com. JJ4OK.com. Hey, you can jump on there. You can donate. We got the coolest T-shirts. We got the coolest campaign T-shirts. Anybody, you got to get you one. And I want to say one thing about the fraud. I've been in criminal justice. I've been in that for 35 years. And let me tell you something. What you do is you get the criminals and you squeeze them, and they'll squeal like a pig under a gate, okay? You got $1 billion stuff gone. Billion. That's a pretty good start. You got a lot of squeezing to do right there. Jump on that, squeeze them tight, and I'll guarantee you they'll start spelling out names faster than you can keep up with them. It's not that hard to prosecute and go after the people on the top. They don't want to do it because they're involved in it. The people that we want to go after them are people who are involved in it. We got to get out of that. We've got to get our country back. We got to start electing real champions, real people. Don't listen to what they say. Go listen and look at what they did. Let their past, let what they've done, let their actions speak more. Go look at that. That's who you ought to be voting for. go look at these two guys' past record. It'll speak all for itself. These are the type of people you need to be elected.
JJ, brilliant. Now, JJ, I'll come back to you, Lewis. When are your elections? When is your election for lieutenant?
Mine's going to be June the 16th for the primary, and I think we do have a Democrat person. It looks like we're going to have either 5 or 6. I hear another guy's getting in the race. Media guy is going to jump in the race. So it's very likely we're going to have a runoff that goes into August, and we'll just see if I can get into that. Hearing good things, and again, I got a lot of people praying for me. We're getting a lot of attention on some of the stuff I'm doing, but again, we're going to be fighting huge money, and we're gonna do a good job with that. We're probably going to get some money, but we're not going to be. These guys are funded by dark money, Soros money. Doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat. That dark money's coming in, and anytime they're funded by that, they're run by that. So just remember all of those things.
Absolutely. Lewis, I forgot to ask you, I do apologize. When is the date of your election? So Doc is March the 3rd, June 16th, in regard to the primary. When are you, sir?
Our primary is on June 2nd.
Right.
And my wife already said I'm going to win because it happens to be my birthday.
Wow. That'd be brilliant. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Guys, I just want to say what an amazing, thank you for making me look good, and an amazing program and a fantastic discussion that I know at times we will have again. I've just had the privilege to host Dan's show for a couple of weeks. I've got a show on Tuesday, but just to thank you so much for joining me over the last couple of weeks, but also I've had JJ on my own podcast. I would like to get you on, Lewis. I'd like to get you on, Doc, in the spare moment, because again, they are other tools, other conversations that you can use. I don't have to tell a media man like you, Lewis, that, but they are tools that you can use, and I look forward to seeing your film. But listen, thank you so much for your time and our conversation. And JJ, we need to organize that cowboy hat for me. I'll see if they do.
I'm gonna hook you up, brother. I'm gonna hook you up.
I need that.
Come to Oklahoma. I'm gonna get you.
It would be nice if I can't get out there. I'll see if they do. That'd be.
Me and Doc, we'll get you somewhere on that
Red
River.
We'll that'd be.
Yeah, we'll meet you at the Red River.
That'd be amazing. But listen, bless you guys. It's been an amazing conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for your time, and God bless, and speak to you soon. All right. Take care.
God bless.